What is going on, my friends? It's great to see ya. My name is Ryan Williams, and in today's video, we are going to be talking about the best dividend stocks to buy in September of 2021. Now today, guys, we are going to be covering primarily 3 different dividend stocks, and we're also going to touch on a small handful of others, but we won't go as in depth on them. And just so you guys know my criteria for choosing these stocks, I chose the ones to talk about today based on how they're currently valued, okay, how they've been performing recently, and also because of their dividend stats, which, as you guys know, is one of the main focuses of my investing strategy. And just as a small disclaimer for you guys, I do currently own 2 of the 3 stocks we're going to be going in depth on today, and I also own one of the other ones that we're just going to be briefly touching on. I just wanted you to be aware of that. And before we get rocking and rolling, if you guys are pumped to talk about some dividend stocks today, please go ahead and give this video a big thumbs up. And if you're interested in seeing more videos from me in the future, I would love to have you along for my dividend investing journey. So please consider hitting that subscribe button as well so you can stay up to date on all my future videos. Anyway, thank you so much for doing that. I really appreciate it. And now, without further ado, let's get into it. All right, now getting right into it, guys. The first stock that I want to talk to you about today is VICI Properties, ticker symbol VICI. Now, some of you may be familiar with this company already if you've seen some of my recent videos. I actually learned about this one from Joseph Carlson, who also has been covering it in many of his recent videos. And actually, side note, if you don't know Joseph Carlson or don't watch his content, I think you guys would really like it if you're into dividend stocks or investing in general. He's got a really good channel, and I actually learn a lot from watching him. So I'd highly recommend you check that out. But anyway, as I was saying, I learned about this company from him probably about a month ago. And for those of you who are unaware of VICI Properties, they are an experiential REIT, or a real estate investment trust, and they specialize on properties that basically provide an experience to people. It's not like industrial warehouses or self-storage bases. These are all like hospitality buildings, and the biggest, probably most well-known building that they own is the Caesars Palace building in Las Vegas, which I know all of you guys must have heard of Caesars Palace, or must be aware of Caesars Palace. And as you can imagine, few other places provide an experience like Las Vegas, specifically Caesars Palace, which is definitely one of the more premier hotels on the Las Vegas Strip. But in a nutshell, guys, VICI Properties owns these type of buildings. Pretty dang iconic, at least in the case of Caesars Palace, if I do say so myself. So I think this is going to be a good one to buy in the month of September because, number one, as you guys can see on the screen, just in the last month, VICI is down about 4.5%. And I would imagine that's somewhat as a result to concerns over the Delta variant, which we won't get too much into, but I think that they're kind of pricing in maybe people not traveling to Las Vegas as much, which makes sense, but I do think that's why we're seeing this dip in share price. And I also think that makes it a good time to buy into this company if you're thinking about doing so. You can get it at almost a 5% discount. And if you guys look on the right-hand side of this screenshot, the P/FFO, which stands for price to funds from operation. It's kind of like the REIT, real estate investment trust version of a PE ratio, but this P to FFO is 14.92, which indicates that this company is still pretty affordable. Anyway, moving on, another reason that I think VICI is going to be a good investment coming up is just look at this revenue. Now, they're a relatively young company. I think they started back in 2017, and since then their revenue has done nothing but skyrocket. They did, what is that, about 200 million back in 2017 in their first year, and then they're estimated to do by the end of 22 about $1.8 billion in revenue, which is a very substantial jump in revenue for this company, guys. So they just keep going up and up and up. So there's still a lot of upside potential to be found with VICI. And moving on, another reason it may be a good time to get into VICI now is because of this piece of news right here, which if you guys have been following this company at all or watching Joseph's videos, you'll already be aware of this, but VICI Properties is going to buy MGM Growth Properties, which also owns some hotels in Las Vegas. They're going to be buying that company and going to be buying the properties that go along with it. And this article has a few key components that I want to touch on, the first of which says, VICI says the deal will boost its enterprise value to $45 billion and position it as the largest experiential net lease REIT while advancing goals for portfolio enhancement and diversification. Which, a quick side note on VICI Properties, one of the qualms or one of the risks involved with investing in this company is a lot of their revenue comes from Caesar's Palace, from that one building. But with this purchase of MGM Growth Properties, that's going to change, which leads me to key point number 2, which reads, after the deal closes, VICI Properties' top tenant concentration will decline to 41% from 84% currently, while 84% of its rent roll will be derived from the S&P 500 tenants with a track record of having paid 100% of rent on time and in cash throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. So that actually brings up another good point. Even in the midst of the pandemic, when travel was really taken a hit, especially in Las Vegas, VICI's tenants were still paying 100% of their rent on time and in cash. And it's good to see too that with this purchase, they're going to be diversifying their revenue even more and actually cutting it in about half of its concentration. And moving on to key point number 3, in case you guys were curious as to which buildings they'll be buying, this reads, VICI will keep MGP's existing 51% ownership in the joint venture with Blackstone Real Estate Income Trust, which owns the real estate assets of MGM Grand Las Vegas and Mandalay Bay, which are also 2 of the biggest hotels on the Las Vegas Strip. So in a nutshell, guys, there's some really good things on the way for VICI Properties, which means you might want to consider getting into it right now before it goes up even more, which it looks like it's poised to do so. And switching gears real quick, let's talk about their dividend stats. VICI Properties has a forward dividend yield of 4.85%, which is pretty high. Okay, a payout ratio, which is actually kind of low for a real estate investment trust. I don't know how accurate this is, but it reads 72.3%. And as I mentioned, VICI is a relatively new company, having started back in 2017, so their dividend growth history is only 3 years. But it looks like they've been paying and growing their dividend as long as they've been incorporated. So they've been pretty committed to the dividend from the jump, which is a good sign for us investors. All right, guys, now moving on to stock number 2. You're probably sick of hearing me talk about this one, but number 2 is EPD. Now, I talked about EPD, which is a master limited partnership company in the energy sector, very recently. I covered it very in depth on a recent video of mine, which I'll link in the description of this video. But because I just recently talked about it, I don't want to give you guys the same spiel. So go ahead and watch that video below, learn all about EPD, and that should answer a lot of questions as to why I think it's a good investment. But one thing I do want to say about EPD is that even since I last talked about it, which seriously was probably like 2 weeks ago, it's at even more of a discount now than it was then. Just in the last month, EPD is down 8.62%. So it is at a very steep discount in the last month, guys, even despite their Q2 earnings, which came out, I believe, in July. And that's something I talked about in my recent video. Check that out. And with this reduction in share price comes an even lower PE ratio, which, as you guys can see, is sitting at 9.87, making EPD a very affordable stock to buy right now, just based on the PE ratio and the down 8.62% in the last month. And one more thing about EPD, guys, before we move on to stock number 3. Like I said, I'm really just going through this one quickly because I covered it super in depth on that one video, but I would like to touch on their dividend stats while we're here. And as you can see, EPD has a forward dividend yield of 8.24%, a payout ratio that's pretty high, but that's expected with MLPs of 81.35%, a pretty low 5-year growth rate of 2.71%, and a pretty impressive dividend growth history, 22 consecutive years of dividend growth. All right, guys, now moving on to stock number 3 of the day. That is going to be Campbell's Soup Company, ticker symbol CPB. And I know, before you guys even say anything, Campbell's Soup, I feel like, makes its way into every one of these videos where I talk about like the best stocks to buy in any given month. Campbell's Soup, the majority of the time, is a stock that I talk about, but I do think that's for good reason, guys. It just continues to become a better value as time goes on. The share price of this stock just keeps dropping. It really has not been performing that well. In the last year, Campbell's Soup is down 18.42%. Okay, and in the last month, just in the last 30 days, Campbell's Soup is down 6.04%. And as far as its PE ratio, guys, it really indicates some affordability with CPB sitting at 14.69. The second reason that I like buying into Campbell's Soup is that even despite the poor sentiment and the continuous reductions in share price, Campbell's Soup is still a profitable company. They're still growing in revenue as the years go on. And most importantly, the stock still cash flows and pays a dividend that continues to grow with time. Which brings me to the next point. Campbell's Soup has a forward dividend yield of 3.46%, a payout ratio that is right in the middle of where we want it to be, 50.83%. Okay, a 5-year growth rate that could be a little bit better, 3.19% 5-year growth rate, and then a dividend growth history of 2 years. But despite the low years of dividend growth, they have been paying their dividend for 32 straight years. So they are pretty committed to the dividend. Hopefully we'll see this growth continue. And touching on their revenue and profitability a little bit, guys, as you can see, they are still growing in revenue slowly but surely. Okay, across year over year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. I mean, across 10 years, they have a compound annual growth rate of 1.33%, which is really not too high, but that is better than not growing at all, so I'll take it. And then looking at this next screenshot, which goes over their profitability, they have a gross profit margin of 34.15%, a net income margin, which isn't the highest that we've ever seen, 9.18%, but I do still like to see that they have some cash left over, and they have a levered free cash flow margin of 7.98%, which goes to the dividend. And we'll see what happens with Campbell's Soup. I think this one is a lot like Intel, which I covered in my last video, where the sentiment is really down for Campbell's Soup. And I'd like to see that turn around, and I'd like to see them continue to grow, obviously. All right, guys, now those are the 3 stocks that I wanted to talk about more in depth, but there are some honorable mentions, and these next handful of stocks are ones that I still think would make for good buys in the month of September, but we're just not gonna cover them super in depth in this video. So the very first honorable mention goes to Intel, ticker symbol INTC. I covered Intel pretty in depth on my last video. I will link that in the description below. Definitely give that a watch if you guys want to learn more about Intel, but I do think that one could be a good stock to buy in this upcoming month because it's at such a discount. All right, now the next 2 honorable mentions goes to a couple stocks in the energy sector. First up, we have ExxonMobil, ticker symbol XOM, which, as you guys can see from this screenshot, is down 5.11% just in the last month. So it's at a bit of a discount. And this stock is known for being a good dividend payer. Its forward yield is 6.4%. And the PE ratio is pretty low for ExxonMobil too, 12.68. And then the second company in the energy sector is Chevron, ticker symbol CVX, which just in the last 5 days is down more than ExxonMobil is down in the last month. It's taken a loss of 5.98% and also has a relatively low PE ratio of 14.93. All right, guys, now the last honorable mention goes to a company that I've never talked about before, but this is one to look out for. Ian over at PPC Ian, which is another great dividend investing channel I encourage you guys to check out. He's very big on this next stock, and that is Utz Brands, ticker symbol UTZ. Now, for those of you who have never heard of this is a company that owns different snack food brands similar to CPB. And I don't know much about this company, to be honest with you, but just in the last month, the share price has just really taken a nosedive. And as you guys can see here, in the last month, Utz Brands is down 22.51%. And I really haven't done much research into why that is. But nonetheless, it's looking like it's at a pretty steep discount right now. And even with that, the PE ratio is still actually kind of high. It's just sitting below 30, which I was actually kind of surprised to see. I would have expected that to be a bit lower, considering how much it dropped in price. And moving on with Utz Brands, guys, the forward dividend yield of this company is 1.19%. The payout ratio is actually pretty low with some room to grow, 35.4%, and they have no dividend growth history, really, 0 years. I think this is a relatively newer company, only having started in the last couple years, maybe even in the last year, I don't know. But could be one to look into. I mean, if you guys do any research on it, let me know what you think of Utz in the comments below. All right, guys, and that pretty much wraps it up for this video. But before I close out, I would like to apologize because I know, especially with these videos, it seems like I talk about the same stocks kind of over and over. I talk a lot about EPD. I talk a lot about Campbell's Soup. I've been talking a lot about Intel, and I've mentioned VICI and a handful of my recent videos as well. So if things start to seem a little monotonous with these companies, I do apologize. I don't talk about them incessantly, like on purpose, but I do think these stocks are all really good stocks to buy right now, which is why I continue to bring them up. Like in the case of Campbell's Soup, just as an example, it just keeps going down in share price. And I may be a little bit biased because I own this company in my own portfolio, but I do think it's a good buy, which is why I continue to keep talking about it. And it becomes an even better buy, in my opinion, as the price keeps going down. So in case you guys were like, God, I'm sick of watching this guy, he talks about the same 4 stocks over and over, that is why. And I do try and make an effort to talk about different ones, but I just keep coming back to these ones because they just really seem to meet the criteria I'm looking for this video. But with that said, moving on, I'm always trying to keep my ear to the ground on new stocks or different companies to talk about or look into. And I actually do thank you guys because you do send me a lot of good recommendations. Actually, honestly, more recommendations that I can keep up with and do research on. But but I am trying to put my feelers out there for other things because I don't want these videos to get monotonous. And with that said, guys, I mean, leave me a comment below. Let me know what you think are going to be some good stocks to buy in this upcoming month, in the month of September. I'd be curious to hear. And if you have not done so already, please also don't forget to hit the thumbs up button on this video, leave a like. Each like given just lets me know that I'm doing a good job, and it also helps these videos get pushed out to other people here on YouTube, which obviously I would very much appreciate. So thank you guys so much for doing that and sticking around to the end of this video. And with that said, I will now get out of your hair. But thank you guys once again so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you in the next one.